You're away.
Hey guys, we're live again with Luke Mathers, author of Stress Teflon. Luke, let's get some virtual proof.
There we go.
It's a book. And you can actually download that or listen to that on Spotify now. Is that
Yeah,
right?
you can. I'll actually put a link in the comments when we post this live, and yeah, we can have a look at that. And I'll put the link in there, and anyone can jump on and have a listen. I'm actually launching a podcast, which is I've just put the first one up there today. Which is the podcast is called Reset by Luke Mathers, and it's going to have lots and lots of interesting people. Our idea is we find good ideas, add to them, and share them. So
Beautiful.
That's what the Reset podcast is all about. They're going to be some random things you can learn lots from really interesting people. So yeah, they're really good fun to do. You've been doing podcasts for ages. They're great fun and get to speak to some people that are really smart in their areas of expertise.
Yeah, there's some good people out there to chat with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Body Science Podcast. It's on everything. It's on YouTube. Where else is it? iTunes.
It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's on SoundCloud. It's everywhere.
On SoundCloud. It's everywhere. It's the Body Science Podcast. Get on board. I think there's like 120 podcasts there. Everyone from scientists through to athletes through to authors. Everybody's had a bit of a crack on that one. So good mix.
It is indeed.
Some of my favourite chatting with Dr. Chris McClellan on some of the big things like testosterone and fat loss. And I love what Harriet talks about, a lot of weight loss stuff. Craig talks about a lot of self-science. So there's some good things on there.
There
Get
is
on board.
definitely.
We're going to talk about dopamine. Is that right?
Dopamine, yes, we are.
When I say dopamine, how good am I going? I'm off to a great start. I had a massive day. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's been a big day.
I mean, one thing I do like about dopamine is eat a lot of protein.
Yeah, well, that's where your tyrosine and stuff like that all comes from your protein. So you need a bit of that to be able to make the dopamine in the first place. But
you want to hit us up with why are we talking about dopamine and what's it got to do with me being stuck at home with COVID-19?
Well, dopamine is you know how I love a bit of poetry. Well, dopamine is your drive to thrive hormone. It's the hormone. It's the hormone that keeps you motivated. It keeps you focused. It keeps you fired up to do stuff. And it's the thing that, like always when we're talking about stress Teflon, we go back to caveman times. And when a caveman was hungry and he looked up in the distance and saw an apple tree 2 or 3 kilometers away, the dopamine kept him concentrating on the apple tree until he got there and he ate the apple. And when he got that, he got a nice big piece of dopamine. He did the same thing when he was hunting. If he didn't have dopamine and the antelope started running a bit fast, he'd just go, stuff it, I won't worry about that. And he'd starve to death. So dopamine was something that was really, really important in our evolutionary past. And it's just as important now.
From an apple, though.
Say again?
I mean, getting it from an apple, he might have got the fear.
Well, he actually, it just keeps him on track and keeps him keeps him going ahead.
Yeah, because people who want to increase their dopamine can actually eat protein-rich foods, which I was a bit pushy in the very beginning there. I apologise for that.
That's all right. That's what you do.
And your tyrosine, they're the 2 big aminos we're talking about there.
Yep.
So
tyrosine and theanine as well.
So yeah, bring it on.
There's another one, but dopamine's one of those things that it's really, really essential. And if you don't have it, you really are going to fall into a big hole. All right. Dopamine's along with serotonin, which we talked about yesterday. Dopamine's really, really important to keep yourself focused and to keep you on track and to keep you motivated. But it can also be highly addictive as well. And we might talk a little bit about that a little bit later on in this. But the main thing about dopamine is it's your motivation hormone. It's the thing that actually keeps you fired up.
Okay.
So you have to think about your training to run a marathon. All right. When you get to that point where you're really wanting to give up, everything's hurting, everything's terrible, dopamine's the thing that keeps you going. So it's a really, really good thing. All right. And it keeps you concentrating. One of the really interesting things about dopamine is its effect on people with ADHD.
Okay.
All right. You know that we're diagnosing ADHD all over the place now, and lots of kids have it. Well, a couple of reasons about it. One is that their dopamine system doesn't work as well as it should. All right. So what happens is when dopamine gets a little squirt in there, it says, concentrate, look at that. You need to get through this. You need to finish this book. You need to do this assignment. You need to watch the end of this movie. If your dopamine system doesn't work as well as what it should, you actually can't concentrate long enough to get to the end of that movie. And have you ever seen the medication that they give kids with ADHD? They often give them Ritalin. All right. And Ritalin is basically speed. All right. It's if you don't have ADHD and you take that, you're going to be going off your chops and you're going to be tripping out for ages. It's going to speed everything up and you're going to be going 1,000 miles an hour. But to a person who has really poor dopamine pathways, that same medication that makes everyone goes crazy actually gets them to focus because it allows dopamine to work in the way in which it's designed.
Okay.
And
so just bringing this back to people stuck at home, because I'm going to bring you back there over and over again.
That's all right. That's where we're going.
If you've got a caveman running after an apple and feeling good when he gets the apple, is it the same as taking 5 minutes out to listen to some music? Is that something I could do to naturally play?
Those things are going to help a little bit, but you're probably, particularly from being at home, the best thing you can probably do is to make sure you actually have the list of things you want to get done and start crossing them off. All right, so you have your list of 10 things that you've got to get done during the day. And particularly at the moment where we've all got a lot of time, we haven't got the structure that we used to have when we were doing our normal 9-to-5 jobs. The problem with that is that you can say, I've got heaps of time, and you procrastinate and you end up not doing anything. And if you've got low dopamine levels anyway, you're actually more likely to procrastinate. You're not going to have that same sort of zest. You're not going to have that same sort of fire up if your dopamine levels are low anyway. But one thing that actually helps is that little warm fuzzy feeling of, yes, I'm scratching that one off the list, and actually having that little celebration at the end of, okay, I've done that one. Let's move on to what's next. And notice, like we talked about yesterday, that noticing that this is a good thing. Well done, me. That blow a bit of sunshine up your own bum thing. All right. And by doing that, you're actually increasing the amount of dopamine, and you're increasing that carrot and stick that felt good last time. I'm going to do that again. And that's one of the big puzzles of motivation, to try and work out, how do I do the good thing and keep repeating it.
Nice. So, mate, if I was looking at something like meditation or something like that to help me in this process, would I get any benefits from meditating? Yeah,
meditation is definitely one where you do get a bit of benefit from, because dopamine's one of those things. It's one of the key things about addictions and stuff like that. A lot of those same things that give you the drive for addictions actually use the dopamine pathways in your brain. All right. Yeah. So if you're full on into caffeine, sugar, smoking, cocaine, shopping, phones, porn, gambling, I've written a few of these down, extreme sports, all of those things really utilize the dopamine pathways in your brain. And one of the problems is you almost get that sort of resistance to it. I've had these levels for so long, I've kind of got used to that. I've snorted 5 lines of cocaine, so cocaine isn't quite doing it for me anymore. Taking it to the nth degree.
Listening snorts cocaine, so we'll...
nor do I. But it's one of those things that when you have a high amount of something in your system for a long time, you don't get the same sensitivity to it. And so one of the good things about...
that do play in that area that are currently home would be having a bad time with that.
Yeah, they very well could be. They very well could be. But what meditation does is meditation, my best analogy for meditation, it's like if you have a snowfield towards the end of the day and there's tracks and ruts in it everywhere of everything you've been thinking and everything you've been doing during the day. Meditation is kind of like a nice big dump of snow, and it just cleans the mountain up and all of that fresh powder, and it's all beautiful. Nice. And the beauty of that is that when you do get the bits of dopamine that you get that give you the motivation to do the things that you might do, they're a lot easier to find and they're a lot easier to utilize when you've got that fresh mountain. So that's where it almost seems counterintuitive that doing something like meditation, because it's a parasympathetic stimulating thing, it calms everything down, but it also cleans it up, and so it makes you more aware of the things that you should actually be focusing on.
And so, mate, if we're adding meditations, one of the great things you said, like to have a crack at, what about heading in that mood boosting neurotransmitter area, things like getting out in the sunshine? Is that something we should be looking at too?
Well, that's going to be good for everything. Yeah, everything's good. Bathing in nature, there's so much research, particularly coming out of Japan, that's showing how much benefit people are getting just by going to somewhere that's not as artificially stimulating. Bathing yourself in nature, walking through a track through the forest, and the things that you see in that sort of place connect you.
That's my plan between the bathroom and the living room because
Yeah, the little pot plant's probably not going to cut it for that.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
but that whole bathing in nature thing and decreasing the amount of stimulus, decreasing the amount of noise in your world,
Okay.
the amount of things vying for your attention. Nothing when you're out in nature is vying for your attention. Your attention will go wherever you want it to go.
Okay.
And so things like that can definitely reset some of these pathways and actually make them work in the way they're intended. Because the dark side of dopamine is that addiction part of it. And they've actually done studies on this, and they've one of the most addictive things you can get is gambling. And if you've ever had anything to do with someone that's had a gambling problem, it's a really, really tough thing for people who have a proper problem gamblers. And they did the research on this, and they worked out exactly when the dopamine spikes, because dopamine feels good. You know what I mean? Do you get that squirt of it when you have your caffeine or your sugar or your cigarettes if you're into that, or you find the bargain when you go shopping? Whenever you get that thing that you are motivated to get, it feels good. Dopamine, that's why you have dopamine. It kept us motivated all the time. But what they found with gambling is that the highest spikes of dopamine was when they almost won. Almost won. So what that does, if you get, and poker machine companies and stuff know this, and they've got to program them to win a certain amount by law.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
So 4 gold bars and 1 squirrel, and you don't win, but you get a massive dopamine hit, and that sits you there, keeps you pressing on the buttons and keeps you there longer.
Wow.
And so the people who make these machines know this stuff, and they keep you there longer.
Is that why the rooms are really well lit up and everything as well, too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're nice and dingy and smoky and that sort of stuff. But those sorts of things, that the dopamine isn't so much about achieving your goals as staying on track towards them.
Okay.
Right? You do get a bit of a spike in dopamine when you get there, but it's the keeping you on track thing is where dopamine becomes really good. It's why Parkinson's people really struggle. Parkinson's is another pathway that the dopamine system doesn't work very well in Parkinson's. So that's where they lose that ability to stay concentrated on things, and their brain and their body connections don't work properly. And a lot of that's because they don't use it. They can't use their dopamine system as well as they should.
So if we're at home at the moment and we're suffering, like our mood status is at bottom level, what's some things we can do tomorrow to at least work on how do I make myself feel better in this area?
Well, boosting your dopamine is to try and find things that are actually making you, it's a bit like the serotonin we talked about yesterday, finding the things, that's my goal, that's what I want to get to, and that's what I'm going to do today, and actually do it, noticing yourself doing it and celebrating that you've done it.
So the reward part of it's
the reward part of it is you want to go towards it. When you get there, you want to say, well done me, that was really good. If you want a pigeon to dance around in circles, if you give it a bit of seed every time it turns left, right, it's going to be dancing around. It's a motivator to keep doing it.
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
All right. So it has a seed, says you beauty. If you just do everything you do and you plod through your day and you don't really fire up, you don't really get into it, and you're just plodding along and you're not noticing any good things, then you're not going to be likely to repeat the good things. There's a fellow that
motivator. So if I'm lacking a little bit of motivation, I should possibly look at a few things to do in this area.
Yeah, exactly. Even just I'm not a big list maker, all right, but I know that on the days when I have a list up on my whiteboard behind me, I have a list up on there and I'm scratching them off, and well done me, a bit of sunshine up the bum, all of that sort of stuff. When I do those sorts of things, I'm much more likely to get stuff done. When you don't, you can just say, I've got all day, I can plod along, and it doesn't really matter. So the celebrations, there's one of the lecturers at Stanford, a guy called BJ Fogg, has written a fantastic book called Tiny Habits. And there's heaps of habits books out there. I think I had a look through my Kindle the other day. I've read something like 12 habits books. But BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits is a really good one because he has a sort of 3-step process. All right. And the last step of that process is that you've got to celebrate your wins.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
He has a thing called BMAP, and behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompts. So you've got to, so the way he puts it is you've got to be a certain amount motivated. You got to have the ability. So he says, try to do tiny things. If you haven't done an exercise program before, do 2 push-ups. All you got to do is do push-ups. And his prompt for that, and this is a really weird one, but it's quite clever, is every time he goes to the bathroom, he washes his hands, go outside and do 2 push-ups. Right? So he might go to the bathroom 5 or 6 times in a day, and he's going to at least done 10 push-ups. Sometimes he might do 10 push-ups each time. Sometimes he might do 20. Okay. But the prompt was he's attached the doing the good thing to something that he was already doing. Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. And the other one he talks about is the celebration. You've got to have the celebration after you've done the thing that was the thing that you wanted to do. And those things do increase the amount of dopamine, and they increase your chances of doing the good thing again.
So I've got written in front of me, dopamine is love, dopamine is lust, dopamine is dopamine is motivation, dopamine is attention.
It's the rock star of chemicals.
And dopamine is addiction.
Yeah, it is the rock star of chemicals. It is all of those sex, drugs, and rock and roll things, and it feels great, and that's why it's such a good thing. But it's one of those things. Without it, you're dull, colourless, and boring, and life's pretty ordinary. Too much of it, or too much need for it, it can go the other way. So you've got to have that balance of being able to sort of, use it for the places where it's good, not abuse it, and have it, work in the way that it's intended, which is kind of the whole idea of Stress Teflon, to understand that this is how our system works, and this is how you can use it to your advantage.
Okay. What about, mate, with where are we sitting with this, with things like our telephone? Well, like, we're never really alone. We're getting notifications. See when everyone. Where are we at here in relation to this? Is it something positive in COVID-19, or is it something we should?
I think it goes back to that thing we were talking about. It's much better to have physical contact with people and actually be in the same room and all of that sort of stuff. And things like a video conference like we're having now is it's a poor second cousin. It's not as good as being in the same place and being able to interact properly, but it's certainly better than nothing.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
But I wrote an article, and I can actually attach the link on it from in the comments in this, that phones are just little dopamine dispensers, and they're almost like having a little petrol bowser going into your ear every time you put your phone up, because every time you get that little buzz or the ring or the little vibrate, it's like, oh, this could be something good. And remember, dopamine's making you alert to something good's coming. You might feel the buzz of your notification on your phone and sort of say, oh, cool, this might be a big job interview. I was waiting to find out whether I got a job or not, or it might be your phone bill. It could be anything, but you don't know. And that moment that you're reaching for your phone and picking it up, you're getting a big dirty squirt of dopamine to sort of say, this could be good. It could be complete rubbish as well. And that it's a bit like the 4 gold bars and the 1 squirrel in the poker machines. Your phone is a poker machine. Every time it goes off, it might be something good, it might be something ordinary, you don't know. But dopamine ensures that you keep going back to it every time. So that addiction to your phone is 100% due to, not 100%, but very much due to dopamine. And the biggest thing you can do to control that is turn your notifications off. Go to your phone when you want to go to your phone, not when your phone tells you.
They control that battle for your own time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool. Mate, so other things that people should possibly do is question some of their habits. I mean, obviously, can we get an overload here if we're going, oh, look, there's another notification, oh, there's another one. And this is
absolutely.
And then there's Zoom meetings and phone calls and all this stuff. Should we be questioning some of the habits we have going at the moment? Like, I really want to talk about what's happening now, not the big. It's like, I'm at home, I'm stuck at home, I've maybe got some kids, maybe a husband or a wife or a partner or whatever. Or you may be stuck in a small office, instead of having 100 employees, it might be 5.
Well, there are certain things that's happening at the moment, particularly with the relevance of Zoom and all of these meetings that are going on. I have a friend that is a franchisor for a big networking company. And I was speaking to him today, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm just fried, because all of these things." He lives in Perth, and all of these things would normally just get sorted out in the individual places all around the country, but because everyone's doing it on Zoom, they're like, "Oh yeah, you should come in too." And so he's involved with 30 meetings in a day that he normally wouldn't have had a bar of.
Yeah,
because he would normally be traveling around the country and do whatever he's doing in the specific place he was. But now he's actually been having to be pulled into a lot of these things which you normally have to. And there's, I guess, a couple of things with that overload situation is you've just got to learn to say no. You know, if that's not going to, it's not going to make your life any better by doing it, then it's probably something you can say no to pretty easily.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Well, mate, is there anything else we need to add here? Like, that's been a pretty little punchy one,
hasn't it?
Yeah,
hasn't it? But dopamine's just one of those things you've got to understand when you're getting it, and you've got to understand when you need to have a rest from it. Because like anything, if you keep, you know, every now and then you've got to sharpen the saw. There's no point chopping away at a tree with a blunt saw.
Okay.
All right. So stop, sharpen the saw, have your little break, let that new fresh dump of snow go on, have, you know, meditate, do some yoga, do some things that are calming all your system down. And then dopamine will come back on board and it'll get you fired up for the things you got to be fired up for.
So we gut driven on this bad boy again?
Yeah, it's not quite as much as serotonin, but still 50% of your dopamine is made in your gut. All right. But yeah, so a lot of good gut flora and that sort of stuff is really important.
For supplements for that, kids, get on board.
Yep. So all of that. But yeah, the main thing with dopamine is just to understand that there is a sweet spot. Not enough of it, and life is dull, colourless, and boring, and you're not motivated for anything. Too much of it, and too much overload, too much saying yes to everything, and it's going to go the other way. So you've got to find your sweet spot with dopamine, and it's something. It's going to be a constant struggle because life is, you know, throwing dopamine at us, particularly with these things, throwing dopamine at us left, right, and centre. We've just got to be a little bit aware of that.
Okay, cool. Well, stay calm. Tablets for that. There's a product drop for you. Okay.
Where's your products?
Show people. Okay.
You've got to have your products. Yeah.
And
good stuff.
Protein, probiotics, gut health. Get on board. Lots of greens. Eat well. Eat clean. Don't go too heavy on the fat in that area. I love keto, but a lot of people who have issues with dopamine would have a real issue on going high-fat diets. So, yeah, talk to a dietitian if you need some real advice.
There you go.
She's on every day. Drop her a message. I think she's on in mornings.
I think she is. They're really good too. Have a listen to Harriet's lives. They've been great.
Awesome. Yeah,
she's been really good.
Andy Jen's been throwing out some great training sessions too, if anyone's looking to do some home training as well, because these are all things that help with all these things that Luke's talking about.
They do indeed.
Getting your diet right, getting your training right. And Andy's doing all these programs around, I've got no gym equipment. So get on board. He was running with backpacks on the other day, had cans in his hand. It was pretty different to his 98 gym days.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So Luke, thanks for coming on board again, mate. We'll keep chatting each day. Just want to throw tips out. If people pick up a tip here that makes their life better, happy, you know, that's what it's all about.
Bring it on.
So thanks again. See you
Thanks,
tomorrow.
Mate. See you tomorrow.
What are we talk about tomorrow?
We're going to talk about the cuddle hormone. We're going to talk about oxytocin tomorrow.
Cuddle hormone.
We're missing that at the moment. We're not allowed to hug people. It's killing me. It's killing me.
Oh, well, game over.
Oh, but see you tomorrow.
See ya.